You know what I like? Projects that use up a bunch of stash. We should talk about some of those. Good evening. I'm Liz and I like to knit. I'm filming this at nighttime. Lighting might be weird, just go with it. We'll work through it. Most of what I'm going to show you isn't going to be me anyway. I was recently going through my stash, as one does, spring cleaning. You might have seen this video, that was part of it. There's going to be a part 2 with everything that's not sweater quantities. But I had to kind of think about, there's a lot of stuff that I've gotten the initial project out of. It wasn't a waste to purchase. But there's a lot of potential left in this yarn, and I really don't want to make a bunch of scrappy blankets. First off, I don't even ever know if I have enough to make a blanket, and I'm not really going to want to find out halfway through. And frankly, I have a lot of blankets. They're great gifts. People know I like to be cozy and stay home, and so they give them to me. So I don't need more blankets in my life. That is not to say that the most supreme use of scraps is not a granny square blanket, because it definitely is. But I personally was wanting to see what else was on the market. What else was available that I could use a variety of scraps on, but also be something that I would normally want to spend my time on. I like to knit garments, I like to knit accessories, and on the occasion I will like to knit a shawl. Spoiler alert, there are several shawls, but there's benefit to all of these, and they're all going to go faster than a blanket, and they're all going to be something that I'll probably get use out of in the future. So this is something that you are interested in, and I hope it is, otherwise I don't know why you clicked on this video. Let's get started. That's hot. Okay, moving into actual patterns. I film on my MacBook, so that's why the camera is terrible, but I don't have a camera, and my phone's even worse, so this is the better option, trust me. We are going to talk about projects in groups. I'm going to have a group of accessories, a group of sweaters, a group of shawls, and then a group of, I don't know what to call this category, but I'm excited by it and may have to make every single thing in it. So stick around for that. But if I am kind of not looking at you for a lot of this video, it's because you are next to all the stuff that I'm referencing. Anyway, I'm not going to be the main focus anyway. There's going to be a lot of other pictures up because you're going to be looking at the patterns, because of course you are. Let's get started. So I guess I should probably start by talking about what this is probably not going to be. There's a fair amount of things that I kind of ruled out as I was going through, either because you've definitely already seen this. I'll mention those in passing, but I'm not going to talk a lot about them because I think that they're very popular scrappy projects, and I already knew about them and obviously haven't made them, not obviously. But one of the things that I think we are all aware is a good scrappy project, it doesn't use up a lot, but it is good for when you have those little bits and bobs, is things like colorwork mittens, or colorwork socks. Like small projects, you can do a lot of striping or a lot of fun little colorwork patterns, and the actual diameter is not very much, so you're using up very, very little yarn. One mitten pattern that I found when I was looking through this that I was really excited about is the Ingela mittens by Sarah Stark, Ingela. I don't know, but I just thought they were a really good example of, this is a mitten pattern that takes, I think this is 5 colors is what it asks for, but it could easily be something where you add more in and just like break it up as you go. The one thing to look out for with these like colorwork sort of patterns is that a lot of times if you're using a less grippy wool, you might not be as happy with the finished outcome. This one does call for Aran weight yarn, so if you had fingering or DK, you could hold those multiple thicknesses together, and so you could kind of get by with duplication of individual strands to make the same sort of thickness, but you would still run into the issue with grippiness of yarn. If you're using like a bunch of super washes, they're not gonna snuggle up next to each other as good as a woolly wool, but that's okay. So I don't have a bunch of colorwork socks and colorwork mittens either. Kind of put those in with blanket, in that most people know about these as great options for little bits and pieces of yarn that you have left over. The other things that I'm not going to talk about are several lines or designers that have a really good, robust grouping of scrappy projects that you can do already, specifically scrappy sweaters. Wool and Pine specifically has the sea glass sweater, and there's a sea glass tee, I believe, as well. And then they also have the Whidbey sweater, and all of those are great for using scraps. I would say that the sea glass is probably better just because you don't have one body color that you're using a lot of like you do for the Whidbey sweater, but it does feel like both of them are equally choose your own adventure. If you don't have a ton of scraps, or if you have like a specific subset of scraps, maybe from like a set of minis that you were really excited about, but you use them on something else and then you have just like a little bit left over. There's some of these pictures of the Whidbey sweater that have like just the sleeve cap done. It's really pretty. And this one's kind of fun too, in that you're not knitting with those colors. What you're actually going back in, like stitching in your scraps over the top. So the thickness of the yarn doesn't matter too much either, because you're knitting the actual sweater itself in one consistent thickness. I said I wasn't going to talk very much about these, but they're kind of cool, so I guess I am. There's also one of their sweaters from Wool and Pine, again, called Voyage, which is really pretty. One thing that I didn't like about this pattern in particular, and that why there's not a whole lot of other colorwork cardigans in here, because if you are brave enough, or if your stash is mostly grippy yarns, the world is your oyster with colorwork cardigans. But one of the things that I don't love about them as a project is if your stash, like a lot of people's that you like save and kind of covet, is maybe like superwash sock yarn, a lot of these are steeked, including this cardigan, because you can steek with superwash. Andrea Mowry, she definitely says that you can steek with superwash yarn, but common knowledge and just my own anxious heart would say you're going to have to do a little bit more reinforcement, a little bit more work, and you might have a little bit less confidence in that sweater being something that you'd have long term. Although, on the other hand, if you're someone who hasn't steeked before, if you're not super attached to your stash, and you're like, this would be a great way to use up some old stuff and learn a new technique, and maybe it doesn't work out, but I didn't waste a whole sweater quantity on it, this pattern or something like it would probably be a great pick, honestly. So there's that. But yeah, shout out to Wool and Pine. They have a great scrappy collection. Another designer that has a really good like scrappy option sweater series is none other than Stephen West. You may have heard of the Garter Marler sweater, the Garter Marler cardigan, and these are very much, they're just such cool playgrounds. I'm looking at the like projects page right now, and they're all beautiful, and you can vary the width of the stripes, and you can bring stuff back in, and you can really play with whatever color palette you have at your disposal. So those are great options. I talked more about them than I wanted to, but those are things that I think you probably have maybe seen or are aware of. And now I'm going to get into some stuff that I at least wasn't aware of before, and that I'm very intrigued by. Have a little bit more hot chocolate to fuel me. Oh, okay. Next, I would like to talk about accessories. So I'm going to start with hats, and I'm going to move into shawls, and I'm going to do it in that order because I wanted to have free patterns that I was excited about incorporated in every category. And then I didn't find any free hat patterns that I was like psyched out of my mind about. So they're one category now because there's several free shawls or cowls. There's also several free shawls, but that's getting ahead of myself. All right, let's talk about these. So the first hat that I want to talk about is by kind of another designer that is going to come up later as well, because she does a good job. I think she likes to play with scraps, and so a lot of her designs have like just good scrappy potential, we'll say. And this is Tiff Neilan of Tiff Hand Knits, and the hat that I love of hers is called the Scrappy Smarled hat, which is very fun to say. It is a DK and DK and fingering hat, so it's bulky weight, and basically you could just grab chunks of your stash and just hold them together and go, and when you run out, and that's fine. Yardage is 190 to 380 yards, and that range is because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 sizes here. I think there's 5. All of them have a comma except for one, which has a backslash, and I don't know if that means that that's the same size. There could only be 4. We'll see. This is beautiful. I think it would be great in the sense that you can use up every last little scrap, and you can have kind of fun if you want to group your colors together and do kind of a gradient. You can just go absolutely ham like the sample is. I think it's beautiful. Do I think that you could probably achieve a similar effect without buying this pattern? Maybe. I do think that the sizing range is definitely worth purchasing this pattern as well. It's only $7, and I think that the like textured stitch pattern that she has really complements that kind of scrappy Smarled look as well. So this is going to be hanging out in my queue probably. The next hat that I would like to talk about is Snap by Tin Can Knits, and most people have come into contact with Tin Can Knits at some point or other, and I really thought that they would be a good go-to free pattern because they have a lot of good go-to free patterns. I've knit several of them and used several of them just for numbers on things when I wanted to freestyle, but the Snap hat says yarn held together fingering weight. And it comes in baby, toddler, child, adult small, and adult large sizes, and it is $6. And it's beautiful. The thing that I really like about this hat is that it appears to be knit with reverse stockinette. And reverse stockinette is great for changing colors, and it really helps to blend back and forth a lot better than right side out stockinette. But I also think that this pattern is a little bit more simple. I don't think that it's giving you too much, but I also haven't bought the pattern to know. It does appear that a lot of project pages in Ravelry have it where it's the right side out, and it still looks like the blend is fairly good, but I think they're using some pretty highly speckled sock yarns as well, so that tends to help blend. But yeah, this is another great hat pattern. This one's got a pom-pom, the first one didn't. Moving on. So the third one, and this is the most expensive one, because it comes with a class, and only with a class. This is the Copenhagen Cat by Tanis Gray, and it is a part of a $39.99 class from Craftsy. But if you're new to color work and you want to kind of figure out how to get a little bit funky with the small diameter color work knitting, this sounds like a really great option. And the hat is really pretty. And while it is knit with 5 colors, these colors are repeated throughout the hat at kind of equal intervals, and you could easily substitute some of these for other things. There are not that many projects in Ravelry, of course, and it doesn't look like anyone has used this as a scrappy pattern yet. Most of them are like 5 colorways, but I think that you could really play around with this and even do kind of like a pseudo gradient. This is kind of going back and cheating when I said that I wasn't going to include a lot of small colorwork patterns, but I only said that I wasn't going to include a bunch of colorwork socks and mittens. I didn't say anything about hats, but I do recognize that I'm cheating a little bit. All right, the last hat pattern that I have is the Short Stack Hat by Lisa K. Ross. And this is one where it's kind of more of an example than anything else. Do I think that you need to buy this hat pattern to use your stash up? No, absolutely not. But if you have kind of an odd amount of a bunch of different colors, this doesn't come with, but there is a corresponding mitts pattern. But just kind of a multi-stripe hat and multi-stripe mittens set I feel like would be really cute to go together, and you could definitely play around a lot with that. Moving on. We are sticking with accessories, but we are moving to cowls. And I'm excited about some of these cowls. Some of these might be my top contenders. Honestly, I might make some sweaters and then make some cowls with my leftovers, if I'm being completely transparent. I've already decided. So the first cowl that I want to talk about is one called Leftover City by Kacey Herlihy. I don't know, this is a paid for pattern. It is $7 USD. It comes in one size, and it uses between 375 to 450 yards of fingering weight yarn. This one is designed so that you can use up to 9 different colors, and you can see how it kind of has this like tooth pattern where they blend into each other, and then the variation, because you're trying to make it the same length for no matter how many colors out of that you use appears to be in the non-toothed section in the middle of there, if I'm explaining that well enough. But it looks beautiful. I think the downside is it is a fingering weight, so you wouldn't be able to hold anything double. But I also think that the upside is you could use kind of a lot. It says you need only 10 plus grams of each color yarn. And then if you want to have matching ribbing, you need 20 grams of one color. But 10 grams is not that much to need. And for people that have a cohesive fingering weight yarn stash, like this is one of my favorites out of this whole situation. The next cowl that I want to talk about is by Norah Gaughan, who I'm a huge fan of. This is the Herlihy shoulder warmer, and it is a DK weight. So if you have a mostly fingering weight stash with some DK stuff, you could hold some double, hold some single, have that all together. It is kind of a yoke, which is a little bit different than the rest of these. And with that, it would also kind of mean that you would want to meet gauge, where I don't worry as much about that if it's like going to be a random circumference around here, but if it's fitting around my shoulders, I like to make sure that it falls right. It's designed in colors to kind of provide a gradation, and the sample goes from like a blue to green to tan, but you could do this in whatever colors you want. The projects page in Ravelry, some have gradation, some don't. They all blend pretty well. Even the ones that are like more abrupt still look really good. So I think even if your color pattern doesn't really line up with a nice like smooth gradation like the sample, this is still a very pretty pattern, even in more of like a bolds or rainbows or black and white. So yeah, that's that. This pattern is available on Interweave for $7.99. Moving on. The next colorwork swatch, I've given it away. It's called the Color Swatch Cowl. This is by Zielinski, who I've heard of, but I've never actually knit any of her things before. And this is a worsted weight colorwork cowl. And again, it being a thicker yarn means that you could easily hold some things double and some things single. And the colorwork is chunky enough that I don't know if it's going to matter quite as much if it doesn't like smooth out. In fact, I think it might kind of look cool if you're using different weights a little bit in this patterning. But basically, you need between 105 to 525 yards. There's the standard cowl, so it's short, or the infinity scarf version. So you can just keep going if you have a robust stash. This is made for 5 colors, but what I'm looking at, it looks like it's probably knit in the round and then seamed. And so you have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you have enough to do 8 rows, you have enough for a color block in this pattern. And so I think that's pretty valuable to have. I think this could be used for a lot of scraps. You obviously wouldn't get this kind of like sandwiched repeat look that she has, but I don't think you need that either. And you could always make one plain design and then a scrappy design. Definitely a good purchase in my opinion. The next cowl that I have is called the Scrappy Birthday Cowl, and I love this one. It's so cute. And it's also a free pattern. This is by Kristen, yes, not Kirsten, Kristen L. Johnson, and it is a worsted weight because it's recommending fingering and fingering and fingering held together. So very marled, very boho kind of looking to me. It's got bobbles, it's marled, it's free. What more could you want? I love this thing. There is again instructions for a cowl and an infinity scarf, so that's great. And every single pattern on here, every single project is beautiful. There's only 36 in here, which is upsetting to me because I just want to see all of them. But yeah, some of them are more color blocked, some of them are more scrappy, marl, aggressive. Some of these you can tell were made with like probably already kind of speckled yarns in the first place. This person has a picture of it on their dog. This person has a picture of it on their cat. God, Ravelers are so good. But yeah, I think that this is definitely a pattern that you can't go wrong with. And really, why would you worry about it? It's free. The next pattern that I have, which is also free, is called Seaside Steps by J.R. Moody. And this one is, it looks, I have trouble believing it, and I don't think, there's not very many projects for this one. There's only one project, so I can't really validate it, and I'm not going to be upset about it if it's not perfectly true. But he said that you really only need about 135 yards for the first and last colors and about 150 for the rest of the colors. So that's not very much yarn, especially because this is a DK weight, and you could hold stuff together. You could even do like one section marled, one section not, if you don't quite have enough like fingering weight scraps to fill up the whole thing. But it's really pretty. It kind of reminds me of some of the like brick patterns that Stephen West has put out, where there's kind of like little chunks of color in between a grid of the previous color and but it's beautiful. It's really nice, and I would like to make it. The last accessory pattern that I have for you is one of those where you are knitting in one type of yarn and then you're using just like the teeniest, tiniest scraps. This is the Shape of My Heart by Annie Baker Designs. And really, it's so cute. I just had to include it. I probably won't make it, but this picture of somebody putting this scrappy scarf around their basset hound, I'm in love with it. It's just, if nothing else, hopefully this is a cute thing that warms your heart the way that it did mine. Thanks, Annie Baker. All right, moving on. This is delicious, but it is quickly becoming room temperature chocolate, so I need to maybe not talk so much. Let's go to shawls. And boy howdy y'all, there's a lot of shawls. This I think is probably the best category for people who don't want to knit a whole blanket but also want to really let each individual yarn shine. There's a lot of options for this. And the first one that I want to talk about is called the Little Gemstones Shawl. This is by Claire Slade, and it is a fingering weight pattern, which does make it a little less versatile if you want to really like marl a bunch of your scraps together. But if you want to really just show off each individual yarn and kind of have it as like a memories blanket, but is not memories blanket sort of size, then I think this is a really good option. This one, it says it's the perfect pattern for mini skeins or an advent set or just using up some leftovers, and I kind of agree. There is definitely one color that you would use for all of the connections, so you would have to either buy a skein of that, or if you just had something sitting around in your stash that was pretty boring. I myself have a cone of white cotton yarn that I bought at a thrift store. I've used on so many projects now, and it never goes down, so perfect for something like this. The gems are knit as you go without needing to pick up stitches or any seaming. Each gem uses 9 yards of yarn, so you really don't have to have that much of each of these. I don't know why there's not that many projects on Ravelry. Some people have even made this as a non-scrappy project, like it looks like they've kind of made stripes of each color, which I think is also a good option, but that's not what this video is about. So I think it's a really good like memories substitute. Moving on to the next shawl. This is the complete opposite in that this looks very marled, very pretty. You could really have some fun going wild. It is a fingering weight pattern, but it's got kind of a very fun fade. It's got tassels. I just like it. And also it is a lot of yardage. This is 1,400 to 1,600 yards, probably because of all those tassels. It is a half pie shaped garter stitch shawl, and garter, like reverse stockinette, does help to blend sort of a fade really well. So yeah, not much to say about this one, but I like it and I think it's a great option. The next one that I want to talk about is called the Red Jammer Shawl by the Lamb Kid, and this is a worsted weight, so again you could get some fun into marling this. This is a free pattern, which we all love. There will be more free patterns in the shawls, don't worry. A lot of shawl options, a lot of free ones on the market as well. This one, again, It's written to have a white stripe in between all of your colors, which you need varying amounts of, but you don't have to do that. You could just make this a different color each stripe. One of the reasons that I chose this pattern is because they give you a very good estimate of exactly how many yards you need. So if you weigh your yarn, you know exactly how much you have of your different scrap yarns, and you're like, can I make this? They do put the caveat that these are estimates, but they're pretty particular estimates. 60 yards versus 55 yards, like I think that's valuable. Next one that I want to talk about, this is kind of one of those where there are a lot of similar sort of patterns on Ravelry. I liked the look of this one particularly, but if you want something that is very much this color scheme looks good together, but I want a little bit of this pattern, I want a little bit of this pattern, I want a little bit of that texture, and I want it to kind of look this shape, you can find other options for this on Ravelry very easily. This is called the Coming Together by Lisa K. Ross, and it's a fingering weight shawl. It is 900 to 1200 yards, and it's a one size. I mean, just look at this thing. I don't think I have to explain it that much. You could do a lot with this. You can make each of those sections in multiple colors if you wanted. If you have a lot of one color, you could use it in every other section. You could make sections shorter, you could make sections longer. These little slip stitch things are so pretty too. I just think it's a really fun pattern. One kind of downside / just a little bit weird of each is they're not giving you individual instructions for how much you need for each of these chunks, but if you were to happen to have like a mini skein set, then you'd be covered for this. Moving on. This is kind of along the same lines, but again, this is one that I just liked the look of a lot. This is the Second Avenue by Amy Miller. This is also a fingering weight one. Maybe I'll just cut this one out. No, I'll leave it in because it's pretty, but it's not really offering anything that the previous pattern didn't have other than to illustrate that there are a lot of this sort of thing you can pick and choose. Same thing here, actually. This is the Starting Point by Joji Locatelli, and it's just another shape shawl, another set of textured stitch patterns, another set of stripes. This one is awesome because, as detailed as Joji is, she does give the amount of yardage for each of the colors that she used. And so you could go in and say, I've got enough to have this color for this color for this. That one I could split into this and this, and I think that, these combined amounts that I have of these two colors should work, and I can kind of, really fun playground, and she's giving you more specific instructions. If I'm going to talk about shawls, I also can't leave out Lisa Much. I've only knit one of her shawls, but I have looked at a lot of them because they're beautiful. And she gives very specific, again, yardage instructions for how much she used of each color. This one, hers kind of has like a gradient to it, but I think you could do it with individual stripes. This is written for varying amounts of 5 different colors on its own, so you may just have this in your stash, and you absolutely should. I would very much like this shawl in my life. Oh, this is another one by Tiff Neilan, and this is the Recollection Wrap, and it is sport weight, so a little bit more flexibility, and you can use fingering, you can use sport, you can probably even use DK, and I think you could probably use them all together in this guy. It is a one size, but it's just kind of, it's busy in a way that when you're wearing it, it doesn't look busy. Like, it's got so much going on, but it's consistent and it's tight. And I don't think that you can really go wrong. They do offer a color orientation guide and schematic, as well as a coloring sheet if you want to play with different color orientation. Because again, this woman scraps. She knows how to write a scrappy pattern. And then again, she also provides, if you want to use the same quantities and put the stripes in the exact same spots that she did, she gives yardage for all 7 colors that this is initially written with. So, gorgeous. Moving on. This next one is for the people who don't really want a project to look scrappy. Like, you want it to look intentional, but you want to use up some scraps at the same time. that's what I envisioned for this shawl. This is the Outing Shawl by Irene Lynn, and it's a worsted weight yarn, so you could definitely hold some stuff double and match up some different weights to make this together. It is mostly one color, but it's got a lot of nice little detailing towards the end, and it looks like even in the project images, there's some versions where they keep those colors more consistent, and there's some versions where they shake it up a little bit more. But I just think it's a really pretty shawl. It'd be very warm and doesn't look scrappy. It looks like you could use scraps, but it's not. This is every color in the rainbow, you know? This next one could be every color in the rainbow, and it's beautiful and I love it. This is called the Fluffy Fusion Shawl by Heather Walpole. And even better, this one is free. This is made with 2 strands of fingering, so DK, and you could probably do it so that you have some just plain DK in there, although it does look like part of the charm of this yarn as written is that you're marling one section to the next, so you have a section with one yarn held double, one yarn held with the next yarn, and then the next yarn held double. So that's that. They also don't give as good of yardage estimates. They say you need a skein of each of these, but they don't say how much you're using of each skein, and it's not a perfectly even amount because the shawl is growing and the color panel is growing with it. So you would have to do more guesswork if you wanted to use this one, but again, it's a free pattern and it's really cute and it is very fluffy. The next one I have is kind of the opposite of all those where I was like, oh, you could do this as a nice gradient. This is the Summer Moon, again by Jill Zielinski. This is a zigzag, very cool. The photos are so like witchy and fall, and I just love it. This is a sport weight, and they do a really good job of offering the exact amount of yardage you need for each of the 6 colors that it is written for. So you may just have this amount already, but I don't think it would be too big of a deal if you change out 1 or 2 stripes for one that's not supposed to be in this palette as well. I also thought that this would be a useful one to blend fingering to DK weights in. And I kind of envisioned it as almost like if you can use thinner yarns at the top and then progressively thicker as it goes down. I just think that would be a really cool like weightedness and really help with the drapiness of the shawl. That's just me. But it's beautiful and I think it would be a really good option. Oh, this is a shawl that I was just really intrigued by. I think it looks really cool. It's a Lina magazine pattern and it is a DK weight brioche. Almost a scarf, honestly. I think it's... Oh no, it is listed as a scarf. I should have put this in accessories. Ignore this one, but also do look at it because it's very, very cute. It is a playful accessory worked in one color brioche. So you could definitely use, you could use other yarn weights for this as well. It's written for 5 different colors, but it's just chunks of, there's just panel chunks. So you could do a different color for each of these panels, and you could use fingering weight held double, or you could use DK weight, or you could make it in a different weight entirely because it's a scarf. So I don't know, I just thought it was fun. Next we have the Secrets shawl by Susan Barstein, and this is very similar to some of the ones that I was showing at the beginning where it's a lot of different textures and a lot of different colors and a lot of different color work motifs, but this one is worsted, so it gives you kind of more options for holding things double or marling things if you want them. It's just cute. The last one that I have in the shawl category is also a free pattern. This is the Scrap Wrap by Jackie Verbeek, and this is a fingering weight pattern. So a little more limiting, but I think a lot of people's stash is fingering weight, and this is one size. It uses up 1750 yards as written, which is a lot. And it's written in half fisherman's rib. So even though it's going to be fingering weight, you're going to use a lot of those scraps up. You are definitely going to be getting a thicker fabric than you would for a fingering weight yarn normally. She says that it's very easy to modify, and I fully believe her. You can just cast on more or less stitches. You can go absolutely ham. She includes information in the download for how she blends the colors, but you can do whatever you want. It's really more of a, this is more of a recipe than a pattern, but it's beautiful. I think it's a great idea. And there's only 13 projects on Ravelry, which is really disappointing because I think this is a great option. And I would love to see more of them. All right, that is everything from the shawls / wraps / that one random scarf that I forgot. Sorry. Now for the category that I've been waiting for, the sweaters. This is cold chocolate, which is just as good. All right. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sweaters to talk to you about. And I'm very excited about all of them. The main problem with making this video, I'm realizing, is I don't have the scrap stash to make all of these. I'm just going to have to generate more stash, more scraps. But I have some paid and some free patterns. And I'm going to start with a pattern that is kind of in the same boat as the other ones where I was like, why is nobody making this? This is great. And I might make this one in the traditional sense. Let me tell you what it is before you're like, click. This is the Climate Wrap Again by Soraya Rina Hossein. And it is a fingering weight garment. It comes in 7 sizes from a 28-inch bust to a 62-inch bust, so not too bad. And it is designed very similar to what I'm asking for here. It is replacing the concept of a temperature blanket with a temperature garment. I think is probably knitted like up and over or the other way around. And you're supposed to pick a different color based on the temperature that day for like that line. But this one, you could also just do with whatever scraps you have. It looks like there's some different textures in it, but for a sweater that you're only really required to use a single row of one yarn, how it's designed, you can just go ham. If you did want to do this with your scraps and make it like a temperature wrap also, I would love that for you. And it's not that expensive. It is $7.67. It is inclusive size-wise, and it's cute, and I think it could be worn in multiple climates as well. The next one that I fell in love with immediately is called the Trove by Emma Dutcher, or Dutcher, I don't know. It's a pom-pom one. It is a sport weight, which I find myself having more and more sport weight. I don't know if there's like a sport weight revival happening, but it's a good one that I think a lot of people are generating more scraps of right now. And this one is written to have chest circumference of 37 3/4 to 66 inches, designed for 6 to 12 inches of positive ease. And I think it's really pretty. It's written for 5 colors, but basically 2 through 5, you need 1 to 2 skeins, whereas you have that main color. So this is not one that would be like a truly scrappy project where you're not using any sort of like multi-skein stash, but it's pretty, and it would use up a lot of kind of stashy balls too if you just have a random sport weight ball sitting around of a couple different colors, or even half a ball. You could split some of these chunks between multiple colors. You wouldn't have to just keep using the same ones. I hope I'm explaining that well. The chocolate is really starting to set in. The next pattern that I want to talk about is kind of to more encapsulate an idea. You wouldn't have to use this exact pattern, but I'm in love with this sample, so I needed to talk about it. This is the Talkeetna by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks, and this is a fingering weight sweater. And again, tried to pick stuff that had pretty good inclusive sizes. This one goes from a 34-inch bust to a 70-inch bust, which is definitely better on the high end than the low end. But it has different amounts of 5 different colors, and she does tell you how many yards you need for each size of each of those contrast colors very specifically, which is great. I love that aspect of this. If you were going to actually try to make this specific pattern, I think that would make it really easy to do it from stash. It's a $9 pattern. Honestly, I think it's worth it. It looks like she's put a lot of time and effort and a lot of measuring of yarn scraps into this. So props to Caitlin and her testers. This is, if that one is not your cup of tea, if you're more of a traditional color work sort of person, I did find this one as well. This is the Kainu, two U's, by Maya Fasala. And this one's from Lina magazine. And again, this is a fingering weight sweater, color work. And once again, it has a pretty good 37¼ to 68-inch finished bust circumference. And then they do very specific amounts of yardage for each color. So if you were trying to make it from stash, this is a very useful option to have. Yeah, I don't know if you would have to buy the whole magazine for this one, is the only downside. But again, like, you probably can't go wrong there anyway. And the amount of yardage written out that specifically for each color, gorgeous. This is another sweater or another pattern by Tiff Neilan of Tiff Hand Knits. I've never met her. I've never even made one of her patterns. But when you're researching for Scrappy patterns, she comes up. She also has a short sleeve sweater pullover that I didn't include, but it has a very similar kind of workup to this. So you could definitely add some additional stripes in each of these stripes, but she has some nicely placed texture bands. It's nice. I also think you could just take inspiration from this and kind of superimpose some of those stripes on any sort of sweater pattern. But this one definitely is very nice. This one also, if you want to have the exact same sweater, if you want to try to use the exact same layout, if you just don't want to think about it, she does include, once again, beautiful, and not for every pattern out there, she does include yardage for each of the contrast colors and exactly how much you'll need for both the full body and long sleeves and for the cropped body and sleeves. So they're putting in the work. Designers are doing a good job. This is one that has a corresponding sweater vest as well. This is called Slipping Down by Turquoise Toque Designs, and it's really cute. This one looks familiar. I don't know why. I think it looks a little bit like an Andrea Mowry pattern to me, just because of the color choices in the sample, but it's really, really pretty, and it uses slip stitches. This is called Slipping Down, and the sweater vest pattern that accompanies it is called Slipping Up. But she was playing with the slip stitch pattern and it was like, I can do it both ways. I'm gonna make it both. And you can get them paired together in an ebook for $12.50. It's very pretty. It's one of those where you would need a main color and then a contrast color, but she tells you exactly how much you need for the main and exactly how much you would need for each contrast. So that's handy. But it looks like there's been a lot of effort put into this pattern. It looks like it's got a pretty good bust range from 32 inches to 62 inches. So happy to see it. The next one, and this pattern, I don't know if I want to make it scrappy or if I want to make it like buy yarn for it, but it looks gorgeous. It is. I'm obsessed with this. This is the Spaced Oddity by Kim McBrien Evans, and it is a $12 pattern, which I'm a little bit frugal, and we'll say cheap. We'll just be realistic. I'm a little bit cheap, and so I don't like to pay over $10 for a pattern, but this one looks worth it. This is a sport weight cardigan. It has a great inclusivity. There is 32 inches to 70.5-inch bust sizes. It says it includes clear information about how to pick a size. There are vertical bust darts written into this for 3 cup sizes, which I've never seen in a sweater. I just have to use like the Cocoa Knits tutorial if I want to add any bust shaping in. This color shift right across the bust line is so cool looking. Like, I just really enjoy that. And you could shake that up at all. You would just want to like kind of change colors at the designated spot if and when you get to that. This looks like it would be an absolute bear to make. Like, this would be probably the same amount of work as some of those blankets would be that I am so loath to do. But I'm obsessed with this, and I hope you are as well. That's all I have to say about it. It's gorgeous. The next sweater is Inca Stripes by Marianne Isayer. This is a DK weight pattern, and there is one color that you would want more of. There are very specific instructions on how much you need. You need 250, 300, 350, 400 grams. So again, that's weight. That's telling you need X amount of balls. But knowing that you need 50 grams or less in 5 colors and then one main color, I think is pretty achievable for a scrappy pattern. And also, I think this is a really nice wearable sweater. I like the kind of double repeat of the different colors. And seeing that, you know that if there's two stripe repeats of the same color, you could be doing this with 25 grams of each of those colors. So that's nice to know too. Or you could do a different stripe every one and have 12.5 grams. I don't know if I did that math right. I don't even care. The concept of it, just so excited about. Definitely could be a good scrappy project. Looks like it would make it very easy for you to follow and just kind of color in whichever stripes you want. Now we're getting into some free patterns. This is the one that I was most excited about as a free pattern. This is called The Blake by Rachel Brockman, published in the Universal Yarn website. So you do have to go there, and I think they probably have ads and stuff that they actually make money off of, which is great because then you get a free cardigan pattern. This is a colorwork cardigan, but it's not steeked. It is called a shaker rib, which I don't know what that means, but it looks like half brioche or fisherman's rib sort of vibes. So this is probably going to take a fair amount of time, but it's really, really pretty. It comes in a lot of sizes. The bust with fronts overlapping size range is from 44.25 inches to 76.25 inches. So it's going to be a little bit oversized if you're on the smaller end, but it's pretty size inclusive. They do include the amounts they used for each color, but it's not in yards, it's in skeins. So you may just have to play around. But as you can see from these pictures, like this is 1, 2, 3 plus sleeve of the pink color. So you know that you don't need a whole skein if you have different kinds of scraps. And this is a DK weight pattern. I don't know if I mentioned that. So you could even have DK weight scraps for some stripes, fingering weight held double for others. So you're in luck. Yeah, it's really pretty. I think I will probably try to make this one. This next pattern, like the Blake, is a free pattern. And also like the Blake, you have a main color and then you have smaller amounts of contrast colors. It's kind of the name of the game for most of these sweaters. This is the Tenna Yoke Sweater by Rita Pelika. I hope I'm saying that right. If she's the pattern model, she looks very sweet. But this is an Icelandic style colorwork yoke in Aran weight, so great for holding things double or triple if you're using up just like little scraps. And there's just a bunch of different motifs in this colorwork yoke, and you could use a different color for each of them, it looks like. There's probably a million other patterns on Ravelry that kind of encapsulate the same thing. So if there is a yoke sweater where you could change colors more frequently than you need to, feel free to plug and play. There's other options, but this is a free one and I think it's cute. The last one I have is also another free pattern. This is a baby sweater. If you've looked for multicolor patterns that are free on Ravelry, you've probably come across this one, but it's just too cute not to share. This is the Color Block Baby Cardigan by Joan Horton, and it's on the Cascade Yarns website. But it's cute. It comes in 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months measurements. Oh, newborn 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months measurements. And it's cute. They don't tell you how much yardage you need, but I guarantee you it's not very much, and I guarantee you could work in other blocks as you go as well. It's a worsted weight. You could use... I know I've said it like 8 times at this point, but you could hold things double for this. This is just so cute. I can't even... Yeah, I'm going to have to make this. Everyone's having babies now. All right. That's all the like patterns that I actually want to make with my life. And here's some that are a fever dream that I'm in love with. Okay, so fever dream might have been a little bit hyperbolic. These are, I didn't know where to fit them in, but I think they're cute. The first one is a free pattern from Drops for a bag, and there's a lot of different tote patterns, but this one is kind of designed to be marled. It's interesting because they give instructions for both crochet and knitting, so if you're bi-stitchable, or if you just feel like getting the crochet hook out for a little bit, you can also do that. And they say that you need, once again, free pattern. They didn't do the yardage, they just say 50 grams of each color, but you can just change the next color when you run out of the first one. So I think this is cute, or even like a random grocery bag with just like marl your stuff together. Bags, great ideas for things. The next one that I am very enamored with, this is the Leon Easy Beanie. It's a free pattern. It's by elikou. And I think maybe I'm not so much in love with this pattern as I am in love with Leon, but it's very cute. This is a dog hat. It's stripy. It's cute. The Leon Easy Beanie is the must-have accessory to make your dog even cuter than they already are. And it works. I have cats. See if I can show you this one. He would not wear a hat, but it would make him even cuter than he already is. Let's move on to my last pattern of the day, and it is the Gumblebee by Lemonade Stand Designs. It's so cute. It is a DK weight bumblebee, and it's a free pattern, and I love it so much. And all of the projects on here, if you're having a bad day, if you're watching this at night and you're trying to wind down and you're just trying to like drown out all of the pain and frustration of the world, look at these Gumblebees, because these are going to make your heart sing. And also, you could make one of your own and use up some scraps. All right, that's all she wrote, folks. That's everything. Here's my cat again. He bit me while you weren't looking. But thank you for watching. I'm gonna go bust some scraps. And if you have any thoughts on any patterns I missed, I know I missed a lot, but if there's one that is your go-to and you want to share it, feel free to drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. I do a podcast every other week, and then I go on weird fever dreams and ramble about patterns that I want to do on the off weeks. So thanks for making time for this one, and I'll see you in a week. Thanks. Bye. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna tell you that you can't make a giant Doctor Who Tom Baker scarf, but what I am gonna tell you is if you do that, then you also have to make this free 5th Doctor Who sweater pattern. So just think about the yarn costs.